Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for being with us at the Frontrunners in Sports Management 4.0 web conference, which is organized by the Sports Management Society of Juror, the American College of Greece and Center of Excellence in Food, Tourism and Leisure, along with the award-winning Active Media Group. I'm Harris Linardos, PR and Communications Manager at Active Media Group, and today is our second day, which is dedicated to the fan engagement. During our web conference, you can follow us on our social media accounts, so do not forget to follow our hashtag FrontRunners2022. Qatar Airways supports the conference as a gold sponsor, the official sponsor of the event. Moto Dynamics and Porsche are the silver sponsors, while the North Face is the official outdoor partner. LiveOn is the conference's official digital platform partner. Gazeta, G-Women, Insider, BN Sports, EMEA, Tornos News, and Basketblog are our communication sponsors, while the National Herald and Hellenic DNA are the official international communication sponsors. We will now welcome our first speaker for the day, Dr. Anastasia Kiritsi, lecturer at Arden University in Berlin and UK, juror at PPW Investment Bank of Berlin, advisory board member at World Tourism Forum, member of the advisory board, member of the advisory board at World Tourism Forum, and member of the advisory council at Harvard Business Review. Such an honor. She will speak on the subject gender equality in sports. So, Dr. Kiritsi, the stage is yours. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Harris. My pleasure to be with you. Good evening to everybody, to our audience, and to the rest guest speakers. And congratulations to the organizers for having me today, and also all the honorable guest speakers in such an important topic. I would like to share my screen. Someone would expect that in the year 2022, we would no longer need to discuss about the gender equality and that it would be still an issue to minimize this gap. Yet, we know that it is one of the 17 goals with regards to sustainable development goals. And more specifically, it is the goal number 5, the gender equality. At this point, I would like to play a brief video on the progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, the Gender Snapshot 2021. So as we see, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, including all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals adopted by the world leaders in 2015, embody a roadmap for progress that is sustainable and leaves no one behind. So gender equality is a right. Fulfilling this right is the best chance we have in meeting some of the most pressing challenges of our time, from economic crisis and lack of healthcare to climate change, violence against women, and escalating conflicts. I'd like to mention that, as perhaps somebody already know from you, during the pandemics, we had an increase of the domestic violence. And so the European Union had to make another social rights action plan. And more specifically, it has adopted two own initiative legislative reports based on Article 225, the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, requesting the Commission to submit proposals on combating gender-based violence and cyber violence, and on adding gender-based violence as a new area of crime listed in Article 83, as mentioned above. Now, how is this connected also with the sport management? Because it has to do with some specific stereotypes. We will discuss today the women's long road to the Olympics, women in sport-related decision-making, women as coaches, gender pay inequalities that, of course, are not so big as they used to be, but they still exist, especially in some specific sport categories, gender-related stereotypes in media representation, popularity and coverage of women's sports events in the European Union, and European Parliament views on gender equality in sports. We'll also see a video that has to do with the inequality in payments in USA, because this is, of course, an issue that is affecting globally. So I would like to discuss a few things on the history of the women's road to the Olympics. We all know that it was not something that it was considered an honor for a woman to participate, even in the ancient era. Specifically, it was perceived that it would be something that it would actually, in many cultures, that it would harm the women's reproductive system if they would deal too much with sport activity. But if we come also to not so many years back in the modern Olympics, we know that women were excluded from the first modern Olympic Games that were held in Athens in 1896. And at the time, it was still considered, as I mentioned before, that physical effort like running, jumping, and climbing might really damage the reproductive organs and make them unattractive to men. So it was only 4 years later that women were admitted in Paris, but they were numbered at mere 22 out of the total almost 1,000 athletes, competing mostly in sports that were accepted for a woman, like tennis, sailing, croquet, horse riding, and golf. It was a very inspiring lady, Alice Milliat, that gave the opportunity to the women to participate in the Women's Olympics that were held in 1921 for the first time in Monaco. So the event was a clear sign of women's intentions to rival the Olympic Games. and the event took place every 4 years from 1922 to 1934. And the momentum it created, of course, it helped the inclusion of a growing number of women's disciplines in the Olympic Games. So it was not until 1981 that the first 2 women were appointed to the International Olympic Committee. And from then on, the presence and involvement of women in the Olympic movement have gradually evolved, reflecting the changes in attitudes and in society overall. So, with regards to women in sports-related decision-making, it's still underrepresented. There were no women, of course, members of the International Olympic Committee from 1996 to 1981. The situation has only slightly improved in the very recent years, in 2019, with 33 female members of the International Olympic Committee, and the honorary members out of a total 144. So it's still fewer than 20% of the members, but of course it is a very good step and promising. With regards to some data, if we want to see a comparison, Europe has the lowest representation of women in the National Olympic Committee General Assembly compared to other continents, for example, in Asia, Africa, America, and Oceania. And if we see here at the graph, women in decision-making positions in national sport federations, we see clearly that in some countries, the gender balance zone is, like in Sweden, is more balanced. And in some other countries, like Poland and so on, still steps needs to be made. These are facts from recent research of European Institute for Gender Equality. Also, if we want to see the proportion of women and men in decision-making positions in European Olympic sports confederations of some recent studies in the previous years, we see that, of course, a percentage of 22% is can be on positions like director general and general, but in the higher positions like president or chairperson, the percentage is so low. It's below 5%. And there we have another issue when we see only one woman in the board of director meeting, then she can either be heard or ignored. Another aspect that we still see, even in the present days, a gap, we see that it has been estimated that only 20 to 30% of all sport coaches in Europe are women. And only in women-dominated sports, such as gymnastics, figure skating, and equestrian sports like horse riding, do actually women outnumber men as coaches. So having a female coach has a positive impact, according to several researchers, on coaching intentions, and can be related to the importance of having actually a female role model. So the lack of such role models can lead to an inability to challenge themselves for the young ladies and to motivate to further proceed. I'd like also to state that due to the inequalities that still exist in certain sports, like football, for example, several female athletes need to do a second job in order to make ends meet. And this, of course, on the other side, can have a negative impact on the overall performance on that chosen sport. What are these sports? For example, football. It's a tremendous example. For example, a total of 83% of sports now reward men and women equal prize money, but this is not what it happens in some sports that are considered men-dominated, like football. I'd like to play that video now.
The fact that women can't make a living wage playing the sport that they've grown up playing and that they're good enough to play is sad.
Being grateful for what you have is extremely outdated, especially for our league, when you see how viable it is. We're asking for what makes sense right now.
We work like a year and a half, approximately, to make what a guy makes in a year at the same job. And that has to stop. It just has to stop. When I was 13, I was daydreaming at the Los Angeles Tennis Club, which is the hub of Southern California. I started thinking about everybody wore white shoes, white socks, white clothes, played with white balls, and everybody who played was white. I asked myself at 13, I go, where's everyone else? Like, where's everyone else? That's not right. And so I made a promise to myself that I'd fight for equality the rest of my life that day. I knew when I played Bobby Riggs, it was about social change. Title IX had just been passed the year before. So it was the first time ever that women got athletic scholarships. Before that, I didn't get an athletic scholarship. I worked 2 jobs, went to Cal State LA. I thought I was living large, but just across town, Arthur Ashe had a full scholarship to UCLA, and Stan Smith went to SC, had a full scholarship, full ride. I don't think people realize how much women still struggle.
I was 7 years old, and I just remember a lot of kids in school saying girls don't play hockey. At the time, they were right. I never saw another girl.
Right now, there's so few role models accessible to these girls in hockey because the landscape of the game doesn't allow us to continue to play after we graduate.
One more. Cool.
You don't always have the time and the energy to put your training first because you're trying to fight first. But I think what is more motivation when we step on the ice is to be your best and to show your best, because you're proving every single day to the world that you belong in the sport of ice hockey. We realize that 200 plus players, that the leagues that we have right now, they're not professional, they're not sustainable. In my opinion, we need the resources that the NHL have to help back us up. We need their infrastructure, we need their business model, we need their support.
When you first enter the league, you're just concerned about playing well. You know, you want to be able to establish yourself as someone that can be a veteran player, someone that can be an all-star, and those aren't really your concerns. But I think that it's important for us to also understand, as the years go by and as you understand your impact in the league on the court, off the court is equally, if not more, impactful.
Billie Jean serves for match point. Beautiful shot, and the Wimbledon title is hers.
In 1968, tennis became a pro sport for both men and women. And Wimbledon, 1968, Rod Laver won 2,000 pounds for winning, and I won 750 pounds. I was so happy we had pro tennis. I did not realize we were going to get a different prize money. I thought we'd get the same. So then in the back of my mind, I knew that would be another ongoing challenge for the future. And then what happened is that tournaments were being dropped for women. So there were 9 of us that signed a $1 contract in 1970, and that is known as the birth of women's professional tennis. We were willing to give up everything so the future generations would have a chance. It took until 2007 to get equal prize money in each major.
women in the WNBA may not talk about pay because they might have initially fallen into this false belief that we should be grateful for what we are getting. And quite frankly, I don't think that a lot of women, when I entered the league, were talking about pay because they may have felt that it didn't make a difference whether they discussed how much they're getting paid, especially in comparison to the men.
I would like to mention also that gender inequalities are evident as we saw across the sports sector, in some specific sport categories more evident, but also from representation at decision-making levels and also media coverage. We see here, for example, that journalists that cover sport themes are mostly men still nowadays. Approximately 90% are men and only less than 10% are women. And also the viewing habits, unsurprisingly, tennis and swimming and athletics come top of the most watched women's sports. Unlike football or rugby, these sports are more widely perceived as having a unisex character. So people like to see girls mostly in this kind of sports. And but that's not what is going on at the moment. I'd like to mention that the football around the world, with over 30 million girls and women actually currently playing football, is winning ground. And more specifically in US, Germany, Canada, and Sweden, they have the largest populations of registered female footballers. Also, on a global level, the FIFA World Ranking for women is topped by the US, followed by Germany, France, and England. And since 1991, the FIFA Women's World Cup has been played every 4 years, and of course has gained substantially in popularity and media attention, generating
Dr. Kiritsi, I'm afraid that I have to
turnover.
stop you for a little bit because we have run out of time. This was such an insightful...
I would like to sum up, and this is the conclusion of my presentation today.
Yes, of course, you have 30
overall,
seconds.
Establishing gender equality in sports policy will involve action in the following areas: increasing women's participation in sports activities, attaining equal representation and gender sensitivity in decision-making, achieving gender equality in sports coaching and teaching, eradicating gender-based violence in and through sport, and eliminating gender stereotypes in sport and in media coverage of sport.
Thank you once again, Dr. Kiritsi. I wish we had more time to see and learn from you. It was such an honor. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.